Hello, and welcome to this presentation entitled Fish Finders for Kayak Fishing. Hope you're having a good day. Welcome to my kitchen, in fact, for this presentation, which is all very bizarre. I was meant to record this the other day, but it was a Saturday, the sun was shining, and I thought we could record this outside with, you know, a couple of kayaks and what have you, or we could go kayak fishing and then I'll record this some other time. And now it's raining outside, the weather's horrible, but this does mean we've had a nice day fishing last Saturday, some lovely bass in the sandy shallows, a bit of a tan, all is well, and we can always do this inside. So apologies about the backdrop of my kitchen. It's not that bad, it's quite a nice kitchen really, but it'll do for today. So here we are. I guess we need to start with some fundamentals. Firstly, what is a fish finder? Does it actually find fish is the bizarre question. Well, just to start with, they come in all different shapes and sizes. I'll show you that one there, look, and that one there, clearly a bit different. But essentially they all do the same job in the same way, and that is they have a screen, and the unit also will have a transducer that pings sound waves down into the water. The sound waves bounce back, get recorded. Some clever circuitry in the back processes that to an image on the screen to show you what's happening below your kayak. So that essentially, in a nutshell, is what a fish finder is. You'll sometimes hear people refer to units as combi units. Now, a combi unit is a GPS system and a fish finder all in the same piece of kit. So not only can you see what's going on below you, but you also have a record of where you are. So if you find a particularly good fishing spot, like say you find a hollow, a little channel where fish are sitting, and you can see that on your fish finder screen, you can flick between the fish finder screen and the GPS screen and record your location. And that means that next time you go out on your kayak, you can go to that exact location and you know that you're going to be sat over the hollow that you found last week or last month, whatever. So the combi units, where there's a GPS and a fish finder, are actually really useful, especially if you're fishing away from the shore, where you've got no points of reference. It's quite easy. I mean, I do a little bass fishing up in North Wales, and I don't generally mark my marks because I know where they are, because I'm, you know, normally very close to the shore, and I know that halfway between that lump of rock and that cave there's a patch where we've caught good bass in the past and I can sit there. But if we were fishing for cod off a wreck or something, you know, along those lines, you can be a long way from any point of reference. So the GPS is a really good way of saving you time and getting you to your fishing marks very efficiently. So that's a combi unit. We've kind of basically touched on what component parts there are, as well as what is known as your head unit. You will have normally a power cable, which obviously brings the power to the unit, and you'll have a transducer. I don't have a transducer here, unfortunately, because they're all on the boats, and the boats live at the beach, they don't live here. But a transducer is basically normally about the size of a small box of matches and fits to your kayak in one of a few different ways depending on how you want to do it. And we'll touch on that again in a little while. The only other thing that you may end up with plugged into the back of your unit is a GPS puck, and this is a GPS puck with its cable. Some combi units have an internal GPS antenna, so the antenna for the GPS sits normally in the top of the unit somewhere here, or some units have an external GPS puck, and that's what you're looking at there. That's a Hummingbird one, but they're all pretty similar. So really that's that's the maximum number of things you have plugged in on the back of your unit. Is a GPS puck if you don't already have an internal one, your power lead and your transducer. The reason we do, on some units, you'll find external GPS pucks, is obviously if we were mounting this in the wheelhouse of a boat, and the wheelhouse, say, was made of steel, the GPS signal will have trouble getting in there. So you can always run an external GPS puck, which you can then put up on the roof. On your kayak, it doesn't really matter. Both work particularly well, because normally your head unit, which is mounted in front of you on the boat somewhere, will have clear line of sight. You tend not to have steel wheelhouses on fishing kayaks, not in this country anyway. So that's that. Just going back to the transducer, there are several ways of installing that in the kayak, and you look on the forums and stuff, there's loads of different ways and stuff, but basically the theory has to still be good, that the unit's sound waves are designed to travel through solid, unaerated water. So the transducer must have just solid, unaerated water below it for the sound waves to travel through. To do this, particularly on the ocean kayaks, the scupper holes have certain mouldings to take transducers, so the Humminbird transducers fit really nicely with the ocean kayak because they're all owned by the same company in the States. Some people, with some of the bigger transducers on some units, they're mounting them on the rudder, putting a rudder on the back of the kayak, which means you can get the transducer up out of the way when you come into the beach, or you can drop it down and it will be in solid, unaerated water on the rudder. Also, you can glue them inside the hull of the boat, because the plastic in your kayak is solid and it has about the same density of water as water. So the sound wave will travel through the shell of the kayak without it. You do lose a touch of performance, but really you're never going to notice that. The one thing you do have to make sure is when you glue that transducer inside the hull of the kayak, there's no air bubbles in the glue or the silicone or whatever you're using. And also bear in mind, nothing sticks to plastic forever. Plastic is a nightmare to glue things to at the best of times, but it does mean your transducer is always very safe because it's inside your kayak. But as I say, the main thing if you're gluing it in is to make sure there's no air bubbles in the mix of silicone or epoxy or whatever you're using to glue it in. As I say, look online and there's different kits you can buy for different transducers and different boats, etc. So it's all quite unique to what transducer you've got, which is a function of what model of fish finder you've bought and what kayak you've got as to how you install it. But it'll be one of those three ways, either gluing it inside the hull, fitting it in a purpose-built scupper tube, or the third option, attaching it to a rudder on the back of the boat. So that's that, and again, online there's loads and loads of videos about installing fish finders in kayaks, etc. I've watched quite a few of them, as usual. There's some really good ones and there's some sketchy ones, but have a watch of a few YouTube videos on that store and you'll very quickly get to grips with what you need to do for your kayak. Or alternatively, of course, if you bought your kayak from a reputable local dealer, which you always should, they will of course be able to help you out, as they will have done this many, many more times than you have. So that, I think, covers what a fish finder is. It covers combi units and it covers the component parts of transducer, GPS puck, head unit. Of course, there's a mount bracket and a few other bits and bobs which are very self-explanatory. I don't really need to waste your day telling you about a mount bracket and some screws and bolts and bits and bobs. They're all pretty self-explanatory, as I say. So let's just have a swig of tea here. It's quite nice filming here in the kitchen. Mug of tea. It's a bit more tricky to make that when we do these videos on location, as I think they say in the film world. So yeah, there's a tea. Right. Now, so you know now about the parts and component parts of a fish finder. So the next thing is, what do you look for when you're buying a fish finder? Now, if I can liken this to buying a car, if you went out this afternoon to buy a car and you didn't know the first thing about how cars work, you're probably going to end up not being stitched up, but you're not going to make an informed choice, and you'll probably end up with something that you later realise isn't quite right for the job. So you need to understand how a car works, not necessarily the engine, but you need to understand the concept of power and how many doors it's got and things like that before you can go out and make a decision. With fish finders, it's exactly the same. You need to have an appreciation of how they work so that you can then look at them and go, well, that's not going to be as good as that one for what I want. And to be honest, it's actually quite simple. We talked earlier briefly about the way that the transducer pings a sound wave down into the water. The sound wave bounces back. The bounce back, or what it's sometimes called the echo, is recorded and sent back up the wire to the head unit, and the head unit turns it into a visualised image. So what you see on the screen of a fish finder is a visual image of a sound wave. So we're using sound to create a picture. So obviously the transducer pings the sound waves, so therefore we can deduce that the power rating of that sound wave is quite important. And it's the age-old thing, the more money you spend on your fish finder, the more powerful your transducer. A more powerful transducer emits a more powerful sound wave, which means you get stronger return signal or a stronger echo. So there's more information coming back to the unit, which then obviously will give you a better picture. And also, the more powerful you go with the transducer, the more adjustment you will get on its sensitivity. So if you're picking up clutter in the water column underneath the boat, you can turn the sensitivity of the recording down, and you can do that more effectively with a more powerful transducer. So we've got a more powerful transducer bringing more information back to the head unit. To display that information in a useful way, we need a screen, and obviously the screen is the next important aspect of your unit. The more money you spend, the more improved the screen is. So you'll obviously see the really bottom end fish finder units, black and white, small screen. Spend a bit more money, the screen gets a bit bigger. Spend a little bit more money, the screen goes to colour. Spend a little more money and the screen definition becomes better. It's like with televisions, you know, if you buy a cheap telly, the screen quality is nowhere near as good as if you buy like a, I don't know, I don't want to use brand names, but a good telly, should we say. It's the age-old thing, you get what you pays for. So what to look for really, it can be simplified right down to the power rating of the transducer and the quality of the screen. And it's very easy because there's measurements for both of those that all manufacturers will quote. The screen is the simple one, and that's normally done in obviously black and white, you can tell, and then for both black and white there's pixels, and there's the number of pixels up the screen and the number of pixels across. Quite often notated in brochures as V and H, vertical number of pixels and horizontal number of pixels. Obviously, again, the more pixels, the better quality of the screen. And just always make sure that some of the manufacturers can diddle you over because their screen width isn't necessarily the same. Like the width of a Hummingbird screen isn't necessarily the same as the width of a Lawrence screen.